They had moved into Schiller's house.
They liked that house. In the mid-90s, that was an expensive house in Miami. It was in a gated community in an upscale development.
The servant had become the master, and life was good.
They told the neighbors that they were in the CIA.
And the neighbors bought it. Back at the warehouse, they started forcing Mark to sign over his assets to them. Each of them had a role. Lugo was the leader and investment guru. With the first money they took from Schiller, he invested in IBM. Doorbal was the muscle. Delgado provided the inside information.
Well, they started transferring, consolidating all my accounts. I had money in my brokerage accounts, my IRAs, my DJ and Associates, which was my accounting company. The procedure was always the same. They would take me to a chair, put a gun to my head, cock the hammer, and make me talk to the banker and tell him. And a couple of times I had problems because some of these people knew me.
Hi, this is Mr. Schiller here.
They knew this was normal.
If he refused, the cruelest game of all.
Finally, they said, we're going to play a game. Let's see if you know the game.
Now, I got 2 bullets in this gun.
It was Russian roulette. Spin the thing right next to me so I would hear it and fire it.
During those weeks, they did more to him than I think people suffer as prisoners of war in horrible countries.
So they pulled the trigger right. They would all start laughing hysterically, and they were all like, they couldn't stop.
Bam!
There was some of it that clearly was just for pleasure.
All of a sudden I hear fire. Then again, fire. And 6 times they burned my arm, and my arm was all burned.
It wasn't like they would hit him or burn him or torture him when they wanted him to sign something and he refused. They were getting their jollies off here. They were getting excited about torturing this man for no reason.
I was just numb. I mean, it was just, you're almost to the point where you're going to be unconscious.
They fed him very, very little. He lost, according to him, about 40 pounds.
And each day, another asset disappeared.
Sign right there.
They're putting documents in front of him and saying sign. Now he can't see. He's just putting his pen down, they're putting it on the paper, and he's signing his signature.
Days turned into weeks, and they realized, why stop at just a couple of $100,000? Why not take it all? His companies, his real estate investments, his offshore accounts in the Caymans.
He's signing away his house.
They took his cars.
Condos.
They started transferring his bank account money.
Everything that that man owned. It was actually kind of remarkable that one of the checks was signed sideways. So on some checks, his signature goes across, on some it's below the line, and on some it's actually vertical.
They even started selling the furniture and paintings in the house.
They took everything in the house. They took the jacuzzi, the light switch cover plates. They took all my pictures, all my videos that I had of the kids. They became me. They were living in my house, sleeping in my bed, using my credit cards, driving my car.
But the horrible part was that as each asset disappeared, Schiller knew he was one step closer to death.
Yeah, if you lie to us, we're going to kill you. I'm saying to myself, well, they're going to kill me anyway, so what's the difference?
3 weeks have gone by, and Lugo, Doorbal, and Delgado are starting to realize they won't need Schiller much longer, and his presence in the world is starting to be inconvenient. There's just one last asset.
They bring me over to the table, and they go, you're signing your death sentence. I knew it was my life insurance policy. I had $2 million.
They force him to sign it over to one of Lugo's loyal ex-wives. Now there's nothing left for Mark to sign away.
So at this point, they have to kill him. They devised this plan. They've had him calling his lawyer. They've had him calling and making excuses that he has a girlfriend and he's going through a midlife crisis, and just they're kind of setting up his disappearance.
On day 30, they let him speak to his family one last time.
Hello, honey. It's me.
They let me call my wife, and that was the hardest phone call for me.
And she puts his 5-year-old son on the phone.
And I knew I was talking to him for the last time.
And that I really felt, because at that point, my son was 5 years old.
But at that point, I knew I wasn't going anywhere. You know, next place was, 6 feet under. It wasn't going to be back home, so.
We got this.
Lugo, Delgado, and Doorbal know just how to dispose of Mark Schiller.
They actually have a pretty good plan.
Their plan is they bring his SUV to the warehouse, they're going to put him in it, they're going to crash the vehicle with him inside and make it look like a drunk driver.
They gave me some concoction to drink.
Come on, man. Have a drink. Have a drink. It's good for you.
After maybe 30, 40 seconds, maybe a minute, I was out.
And with him inside, they crash it into a pole. They get out, they spread gasoline inside the car.
They lit the car on fire.
Look at that thing go, man. Look at that thing go, man.
Their revenge seems complete, and now 2 million reasons to make a fast getaway. But just as they're about to leave, the most annoying thing happens.
Somehow or other, I was able to get out of the car.
The flames revive him enough that Marcelo Schiller opens the door to the car and stumbles out of the flaming car.
Mark Schiller still isn't dead, but Doorball and Lugo are up to the challenge.
Doorball is screaming, "Run him over."
Run him over. Run him over.
Boom, they drive over him with their car.
Oh, okay, wait, hold on.
And then they put it in reverse and they back over his body. So at this point, he's got to be dead.
They say if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. But there's one small problem. Schiller isn't dead.
I survived.
And now, he wants revenge.
I'm gonna get you. Look behind you. I'm coming for you.
They say every awakening is sweet, but some are sweeter than others.
Marcelo Schiller wakes up in the ER.
You know, I woke up and I said, oh my God, I'm alive.
Not that everything was perfect.
And the pain was just, couldn't be described, the pain I was in.
His pelvis was shattered when the car ran over him. His bladder had been ruptured, and surgeons had to remove his spleen.
Who would have thought that he would survive all of that? But he did.
Mark Schiller calls private investigator Ed Du Bois from his hospital bed.
It was hard for me to focus on this rambling, slurred speech story.
Can you send me to security guards right away, please?
So he calls Ed Du Bois, and Ed Du Bois says, look, if these guys really want you dead, and I put a guard at your door, they're going to kill you and my guard.
And I had no idea whether the story was true or not, but if it was true, then he should leave. Leave as soon as possible. His immediate need was to survive.
When Schiller's name didn't show up in the newspapers the next day, the gang realized he might not be dead.
They had a living eyewitness that could put them away. So I would think that that would be the reason they'd be looking for him.
Schiller, S-C-H-I-L-L-E-R.
You might have checked that as a John Doe.
And in fact, they already were.
Mark is a mustache.
So they start calling hospitals. And Jackson Memorial Hospital says, yes, there's a Marcelo Schiller here.
We left at 8 o'clock, and at 10 o'clock they came in.
As they're walking the halls of Jackson Memorial Hospital, Marcelo Schiller is on an air ambulance flight to New York. They came very close to killing him a second time.
Mark Schiller is alive, and now he wants revenge. Just before he boards a plane to New York, far from the reach of the gang, he calls George Delgado.
I'm gonna get you. Look behind you. I'm coming for you.
Well, I mean, just look at it this way. If anybody did that to you, wouldn't you want to get back at them somehow?
But surprisingly, Schiller doesn't go to the cops right away.
I've always been criticized. Then why didn't I go to the police sooner?
He has his reasons, which would become clear soon enough. Meanwhile, he hires his own private investigator to look for evidence.
The feds always say, follow the money. Okay, so that's what they did.
Du Bois notices that many of the assets signed over by Schiller were actually notarized by none other than the owner of Sun Gym, John Meese.
And John Meese was a guy that went to the same high school as I did.
Meese tells Du Bois it's all a misunderstanding and sets up a meeting. But Lugo and Delgado are late. Being the good investigator he is, he starts going through the trash.
Each one of the pieces of trash we pulled out was more dramatically involved in the case than the other. And there was photocopies of bank statements photocopies of checks from the Sun Gym to all the bad guys and copies of checks from Schiller's account. It was obvious to me that somebody had been in there probably the night before, the day before, going through all the evidence and throwing it away. It was really amazing.
When Delgado finally arrives, he says it's all a misunderstanding.
And George Delgado starts just trying to spin something, but Ed isn't going to have any of it.
I said, you almost had the perfect crime here, but Mark Schiller's alive, and we're going to put your ass in jail. And he held up both of his hands. He says, there's no need for that. I said, oh yeah, really? Why? He said, we're going to give you all the assets back. And he said, we need a contract. We need a contract signed by you and Mark Schiller that you're going to accept the $1,260,000 check from us with the agreement that you will never go to the police department and tell anybody. So I'm thinking real quickly, number one, this is an unenforceable contract. You can't ever do this. And number two, how are they going to get any lawyer to draw this up?
Schiller's representatives, Du Bois, his lawyer, they go, sure, we'll enter into this agreement. The plan being, we'll get all of our clients' money back. Because if we go to the police now and have you arrested, you're going to use all that money to hire the best defense lawyers you can find. We'll never get the money back.
Ed Du Bois and Mark Schiller negotiate with the bad guys for 4 months.
But when it becomes clear the bad guys are just stalling, Schiller and Du Bois finally go to see Miami-Dade police detective Iris Deacon.
He came on April 21st of 1995. He came with a story of tortured, kidnapping, tortured, and attempted murder.
They tell her the whole tale, and she is skeptical.
4 months later, I have to question your credibility at that time. A true victim would come to the police immediately.
So they're listening to a story and they just don't buy it.
Well, it's kind of an incredible story.
There were a lot of things that were suspicious, only because of the fact that he didn't come to us first.
She wondered, was he hiding something?
And now I know. Now I'm like really upset. These guys aren't going to believe him.
But even though she isn't entirely buying it, Iris Deacon does begin looking into his story.
The first day I met Mark Schiller, after the interview, I went down to his residence on Ocala Cove. I talked to one neighbor, and the neighbor told me, yes, that he knew Schiller, but had not seen him since November, and that since then, somebody else has taken over the house. I told myself, oh boy, this is good.
Maybe there was something to this after all, so she began examining the paper trail.
I had started to get the subpoenas for Schiller's offshore accounts.
But meanwhile, the bad guys are still living large.
They wanted everybody to believe they were high rollers. They were very good-looking men, and women liked them.
There are toys to buy, girlfriends to impress.
The party's inside.
But they're already beginning to run low on funds. After all, they had that lifestyle to maintain. Now how could they possibly make more money? Du Bois warns the cops that these guys are going to do it again.
I told him, I said, Iris, this is the meanest group of criminals that I have ever investigated. If you guys don't take them off the street, they're going to do this again. And she commented, I think you've been watching too much TV.
Deacon remembers it differently. She asks Schiller to take a polygraph to confirm he's telling the truth.
If I'd had access to Mark Schiller, those subjects would have been arrested.
But Mark Schiller, believing the police aren't taking him seriously, skips the polygraph.
I think the people that dropped the ball are Mark Schiller and Ed Du Bois. The Miami-Dade Police Department worked that investigation. What they didn't have was a willing victim.
If he'd have wanted revenge, he should have come to us at first.
In fact, Schiller leaves the country to rejoin his wife and kids, now living in Colombia.
He's out of here. The police aren't taking him seriously, and he goes back to South America. Which is a shame, because had they listened to him, the next victims might still be alive.
Coming up, another day, another millionaire.